Would Mad Max or Rocky Balboa make a better Green Lantern? And is John Wick better suited for the Star Sapphires of Love or the Yellow Lanterns of Fear? Yet again, I'll be explaining the powers and rules of every major Lantern Corps and picking 3 ideal candidates for each, all from the world of movies and cinema. I'll cover the whole emotional spectrum, plus the white and black cores of life and death. And to be clear, these are live-action movie original characters, so if the movies are based on a book, like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, they won't be included in this list. That also goes for movies based on comics, TV, games, etc., so no MCU. Oh, and it should go without saying, but spoilers ahead for a whole bunch of movies. Got it? Good. Let's get moving with our first corps, the Red Lanterns of Rage. The Red Corps channels the emotional energy of wrath, an all-consuming anger that powers their rings with violent strength. Their blood becomes corrosive plasma via a blood pact, binding them to fury. Removing the ring is fatal unless a Blue Lantern's hope saves them. Red Rings sacrifice everything, their bonds, sanity, and lives to destroy their enemies, driven by grudges that eclipse reason. And they fear losing control of their hate, but are willing to take that risk if it gives them the power to destroy its source. Across all movies, we're looking for characters whose anger isn't fleeting, but a core part of their identity. My first choice is Furiosa, originally appearing in Mad Max Fury Road. Her story was expanded in her own origin film a few years later. She's a warrior in a post-apocalyptic desert ruled by tyrants, kidnapped as a child by the cult of a power-hungry despot, Dementis. He forces Furiosa to watch as he kills her mother, then adopts her as his own daughter. Dementis later trades Furiosa to the terrifying Immortan Joe, who keeps women like cattle, setting Furiosa on a journey of revenge to kill both of the tyrannical freaks who killed her family and turned her into a tool, and eventually stage a rebellion to free Immortan Joe's many wives. Furiosa's rage against Dementis and Joe is what defines her, a grudge born of stolen freedom. Her desire to liberate others clashes with a fear of becoming as cruel as her captor, isolating her from allies like Max, whom she only trusts reluctantly. As her anger drives her to risk her own life countless times, often nearly dying in order to settle her scores. A Red Ring's plasma would mirror her burning need to destroy Joe's empire, but its self-destructive pact would amplify her fear of losing her humanity. Furiosa's emotional conflict, vengeance versus redemption, makes her a very potent Red Lantern, though her hope for a better world keeps her from becoming the heart of the Corps. My next pick is sure to be a fan favorite, and we already know he looks great illuminated by red light. Darth Vader, primary protagonist turned antagonist of the Star Wars saga, begins his journey as Anakin Skywalker, a gifted Jedi. Seduced by Emperor Palpatine's promises to save his wife Padme from death, Anakin turns to the dark side, tragically losing her anyway in a self-fulfilling prophecy. Cut to pieces by his closest friend, burned by magma, and rebuilt as an inhuman cyborg, he becomes the Empire's enforcer, haunted by his past betrayals. Vader's rage is a galaxy-wide inferno, fueled by a grudge against the Jedi, especially Obi-Wan, for abandoning him. His desire to dominate masks a fear of vulnerability. Anakin's lingering heart is evident in tense exchanges with his son Luke, where love threatens to overturn that hate. Vader's anger isolates him. It destroys his bonds with Padme, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka, all a necessary change as part of his fall to the dark side. A red ring would channel this self-loathing, its plasma a symbol of his scorched soul, but the blood pact and the pain it causes would only make his connection to the dark side that much more powerful. Fear led to anger, and anger led to hate, and that hatred made him the most terrifying force in the galaxy for decades. My final pick for the Red Corps is more of a tragic one, Caesar from the Planet of the Apes reboot trilogy. Now, to get this out of the way, yes, the original Planet of the Apes film is based on a novel, but the reboots heavily deviate from that plot, and the characters are wholly original. And also, it's my video, so I'm gonna do what I want. Anyway, Caesar is a chimpanzee uplifted to a new level of consciousness by an experimental Alzheimer's drug that boosts his intelligence. Raised by humans, he faces betrayal. He's caged, experimented on, leading him to stage a revolt and free his fellow apes. As a leader, he battles human oppression and internal ape traitors like Koba, striving for peace but ultimately driven to vengeance after the murder of his family. Caesar's rage is real and palpable and often justified. In the end, he chooses to become more of a savior of the remaining apes than an agent of vengeance, but with the pull of a red ring igniting that latent rage even brighter, he would become just like Koba, just as he feared, an ape looking to slaughter humanity for their countless injustices, and with the power of the red light, he would definitely achieve his goal. Moving on to our next core is the Orange Light of Avarice. The Orange Lantern core is a solo act, powered by greed. One wielder hoards the power battery and uses the ring alone, its constructs forming a ghostly army of past users, driven by an obsessive need to own everything. The ring's corruption breeds paranoia, amplifying fears of theft and betrayal. Looking for a good Orange Ring user, we want characters who crave wealth, power, status, with their grudges targeting those who challenge their hoard. They desire total control, fear losing their gains, and manipulate others to secure their obsession. Their interpersonal conflicts typically revolve around exploiting allies, and greed is often their downfall. First up, we have Miles Braun from Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. Braun is a tech billionaire, the driving force behind a shady crypto empire. He presents himself as a visionary, hosting lavish retreats for his disruptor friends, other free-thinking types as he sees them, but all his success secretly stems from stealing his partner Andy's ideas, leading to her betrayal and his desperate attempts to cover up his crimes. Braun's greed for fame is what drives his scams, desiring to be seen as a genius while fearing exposure as a fraud. He loves physical things, but he also needs to be revered by others. So when Andy unexpectedly appears on his island getaway, he's driven to riskier and riskier moves as he frantically tries to keep the truth from being revealed and his empire from crumbling down. An orange ring would fuel Braun's avarice and his already existing paranoia. Its constructs would guard his empire, but the ring's influence would eventually deepen his distrust too much, turning friends into foes. Next up is a classic movie villain, Biff Tannen from the Back to the Future trilogy. He starts out as just a bully in 1950s Hill Valley, tormenting Marty's dad, George McFly, and pining after his mom, Lorraine. But in an alternate version of 1985, it's his limitless greed, along with a stolen sports almanac from the future, that transforms Hill Valley into a grimy urban hellscape. Biff becomes a tyrant, willing to murder anyone who threatens his empire of filth. His greed for power, money, women, status, it all stems from insecurity, desiring dominance while fearing being a nobody. His grudge against Marty and George drives his cruelty, resenting their resistance, because people are essentially possessions to him. His friends are all pawns, controlled by intimidation and bribery. An orange ring would amplify Biff's need to own Hill Valley, extending his ambitions out across the whole country. Its constructs enforcing his rule, but the ring's paranoia would heighten his fear of betrayal, seeing threats everywhere he looks. And of course, the ring would turn his protective feelings for the almanac into a creepy, all-encompassing obsession. For my final pick, I really wanted to go with Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, but that movie is actually based on a book, and that book is based on a real guy. So if we can't pull from the Wolf of Wall Street, how about we just drop the wolf? Gordon Gekko is a corporate raider who manipulates markets for profit in the 1987 film Wall Street. The movie centers around his time mentoring young trader Bud Fox, who he preaches to that greed is good, and makes Bud extremely wealthy before stabbing him in the back and tanking the value of his family company in order to take it over for a profit. Gekko is eventually arrested for his countless instances of illegal insider trading, and supposedly turns over a new leaf after getting out of prison 20 years later, but that turns out to be a farce. He eventually defrauds his own family and chooses to steal $100 million instead of participating in his grandchild's life. Gekko is the perfect Orange Lantern because he's greedy, he knows it, and he endorses it. Gekko's predatory interactions, charming to exploit others, alienate even his family. His relationship with his daughter and grandchild, a casualty of his ambition. An orange ring would supercharge all of his avarice, its constructs a corporate army, seizing entire markets and overturning world economies to fill the bottomless pit in his soul. Next up on the emotional spectrum are the Yellow Lanterns of the Sinestro Corps. They wield fear, their rings charged by the terrifying of others into submission. A Yellow Lantern's constructs manifest their victims' deepest phobias, creating order through the dread they cause. And when you wield a yellow ring, it gets to peek inside the mind of whoever they're scaring, automatically generating whatever horror traps or creepy crawlies scare them the most. In the world of movies, we're looking for villains who thrive on fear, desire control, and love to play with their victims, holding grudges against anyone who resists their villainy. This was definitely the easiest core to put together, because there's no shortage of horror movie villains to fill these 3 spots. First up, the terrifying little doll so scary they renamed the franchise after him, Chucky from the film Child's Play. Chucky was originally the serial killer Charles Lee Ray, who transfers his soul to a doll to escape death using the power of voodoo. He pursues various victims with reckless abandon, either to steal their bodies for his own, or just because he finds it fun. Chucky desires immortality, and every time someone thwarts his quest to steal a new body, his grudge against them gets bigger, and he uses it to fuel his acts of terror. But just like most other Yellow Lanterns, Chucky has fears of his own. He's scared most of death, and second most of being stuck in the body of a doll for all eternity, and his twisted masochism makes him inflict those fears onto others, savoring in their panic. I can see him using a yellow ring to enhance his horror, or maybe even creating a construct of his old body to carry himself around, if not just a swarm of bloody knives. My next pick is the sadistic John Kramer, better known as Jigsaw, primary antagonist of the Saw saga. Jigsaw is a terminally ill engineer with brain cancer, who after surviving a suicide attempt, creates deadly traps to test other people's will to live, furious that they would throw their lives away while his life gets cut short by a disease he can't control. He believes suffering teaches gratitude, targeting those he deems ungrateful with his twisted games. He wants more than anything for other people to fear for their lives so they'll appreciate them more. Jigsaw's desire to fix humanity through fear stems from a hatred for those who waste their lives, fearing his own mortality from cancer. His clinical interactions lecture his victims, showing absolutely no empathy. A yellow ring would amplify all of this terror, constructing psychological mazes and torturous Rube Goldberg machines out of yellow light. But his own fear of death would drive him to test more and more, constantly pushing the limits of what he can force another person to go through. My last choice is a real classic. Honestly, I really wanted to pick Jason Voorhees, but I think when it comes to enjoying spreading fear, there's no one better than Freddy Krueger, primary antagonist of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy is a serial child murderer burned alive by vengeful parents in the town of Springwood. Resurrected as a dream demon, he haunts teens' nightmares, killing with sadistic glee, targeting those poor souls brave enough to fight back. Freddy is a practically perfect Yellow Lantern. His desire to torment is so strong that it persisted after death. He fears oblivion, being forgotten, and relishes in his victims' terror to cement his legendary status in Springwood. Freddy's mocking interactions amplify all of the dread, isolating victims inside their own minds. A yellow ring would enhance his fear-weaving, its constructs crafting personalized nightmares, his ability to exploit personal fears making him a spectral terror whose dread could haunt star systems. Luckily, all that fear has someone to fight against it. The Green Lantern Corps of Oa harnesses willpower, creating constructs through unyielding resolve against fear, as a legion of heroes who police the stars. As cosmic peacekeepers, they face despair with grit, always looking to protect the innocent from tyranny and disaster. Because Green Lanterns use willpower, which is a very common trait in heroic figures, there are countless characters from film who would be great for the Corps. Mad Max, Luke Skywalker, Beatrix from Kill Bill, Chris from Get Out, even Elle Woods of Legally Blonde shows some pretty strong tenacity. And for my final honorable mention on who would totally be number 4 on this list, that's gotta be John McClane from Die Hard. With that many great heroes not making the list, these next few better be pretty great, huh? I think so. First up, the scrappy punk from Jersey who won the All-Valley Karate Tournament, Daniel LaRusso, the Karate Kid. Daniel starts out as the lonely son of a single mother, a total fish out of water in California, forced to deal with the bullying of Johnny Lawrence and the batshit insane antics of Cobra Kai, a karate dojo run by a slew of comically evil Vietnam vets who never stopped fighting after returning to the States. With the help and mentorship of his sensei, Mr. Miyagi, Daniel learns karate, gaining confidence to face his fears, and eventually wins his fight against Johnny and Cobra Kai. Daniel is constantly faced with overwhelming odds, chased by a swarm of martial artist bullies all dressed as skeletons, and choosing to fight his final battle despite having a broken leg. Daniel definitely has a hot streak. His grudge against Johnny drives his training, and he could definitely wield a red ring too, but Miyagi's wisdom tempers his anger, and ultimately teaches him about inner peace as the greatest weapon against fear. A green ring would harness his determination, his constructs, disciplined extensions of his karate, giant fists and feet flying to crush all those who choose to strike first, like Cobra Kai. Next in line, we have the woman who always fought her hardest despite the fact that she never asked for the burden of saving humanity, Sarah Connor from The Terminator. She starts as a waitress hunted by a cyborg from the future, where the uncontrolled AI Skynet destroys humanity. Learning that her unborn son John will one day lead the resistance against Skynet, and that's why she's being hunted, she chooses to become a warrior, training relentlessly to stop the oncoming Judgment Day. Sarah is a fantastic Green Lantern pick. Her willpower is forged in her desire to save humanity, driven by the knowledge that failure will doom her son and the world. Her determination to defy a preordained future, stubbornly refusing to let it come to pass, is the exact kind of hard-headed nonsense that makes some of the best GLs. The fact that she would be willing to face down machines after seeing the incredible power of the T-1000 makes her a beacon of perseverance. She would definitely use the green ring to protect her son and the future, forging tactical constructs to safeguard humanity from extinction. And if she falls from an onslaught of Skynet machines, the ring would absolutely choose her son John to finish the fight. And finally, this spot was never gonna go to anyone else. Nobody embodies willpower quite like Rocky. Rocky Balboa was a small-time boxer and debt collector, just barely scraping by in Philadelphia's grimy streets, content to never make anything of himself. But when heavyweight champion Apollo Creed offers him a title shot, Rocky seizes the chance to prove he's more than a bum, finding his will to push forward in his love for the shy pet store clerk Adrian and guidance from his grizzled trainer Mickey. Rocky went the distance, and then he did it again and again and again. He never relented in any of his fights, no matter how badly his face got smashed in. Even when his friend and rival Apollo Creed was killed in the ring by the gigantic doped-up Russian Ivan Drago, Rocky chose to fight him anyway, and he fought so hard that he convinced an entire crowd of Soviets in the center of Cold War Russia to start cheering for an American. I think Rocky himself summed it up perfectly. It's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That is some Green Lantern shit if I have ever heard it. Alongside the Green Lanterns are a corps that can often be found supporting and defending them. The Blue Lantern Corps radiates hope, their rings supercharging green rings and calming red ones, although their power is passive without green willpower nearby. Blue Lanterns inspire optimism in the darkest moments, driven by a desire to uplift others, and members of the Corps are chosen for their ability to hold hope in their hearts despite dire circumstances, and inspire hope in others who witness them. Their emotional battles involve overcoming loss or futility, forging connections that spark belief. Their hope is a quiet but unyielding force that transforms hearts. For a good Blue Lantern, we want a character that braves hardship with an unwavering belief that things can get better. For my first pick, I really wanted to go with Mark Watney, the protagonist of The Martian, stranded alone on the Red Planet for a year. But The Martian is unfortunately an adaptation of a book, so I went with another hero who looked into the bleak expanse of space and kept fighting to live. Ryan Stone from Gravity. A medical engineer on her very first space mission, everything is thrown into chaos when a debris storm destroys her shuttle, stranding her in orbit alongside her one ally, astronaut Kowalski. The two make a very perilous trek across Earth's orbit toward the International Space Station, but they discover that the ISS is abandoned and dysfunctional, and Kowalski is killed during the trip. Racked with the despair of her situation, the loss of Kowalski, and the pain of her young daughter's death from before she came up into space, Ryan almost loses the will to live. But she eventually summons the strength to keep moving forward, the persistence of belief that she can make it back to Earth despite her terrible circumstances. And after several very close brushes with death, she finally manages to stand on Earth's soil again and begin walking home. Ryan's hope is born from her desire to live, a fragile spark against her fear of surrendering to grief. Her ability to find hope in a void, pushing past loss to reach Earth, makes her a very compelling Blue Lantern, her optimism a lifeline forged in solitude. My next choice is probably going to come out of left field, but I think Phil Connors from Groundhog Day would make a great member of the Blue Corps. He starts out as a very cynical and selfish Pittsburgh weatherman, sent to cover the Groundhog Day festival in Punxsutawney. But he eventually becomes trapped in a time loop, reliving February 2nd over and over again. He starts out acting just as you'd expect, indulging in his hedonistic desires because he no longer has to deal with consequences, eating tons of sweets, stealing money and buying fancy cars, and constantly trying to sleep with his coworker Rita. But when the loneliness finally gets to him and he falls into despair, that is when a new type of hope is born. Phil finally decides to make the most of his situation, helping the members of the town of Punxsutawney, saving lives, rescuing marriages, and using his time to pursue personal development and real human connections. By the end of the film, he's essentially become the mythical Sisyphus, forced to push the same boulder up the same hill every day, but smiling despite it all. The Phil Connors at the end of Groundhog Day is one of the most hopeful film characters in existence, so much so that at the end of the film, once he's finally broken out of the time loop, he considers staying in this place that's trapped him for what could have been dozens or even hundreds of years, all because he knows he will find a way to see the good in it. And finally, my last two choices were picked based on how much hope a character feels, but this last one is all about inspiring hope in others. Who else can rile up the fire inside the hearts of men to believe in a better tomorrow than William Wallace of Braveheart? A Scottish farmer in the late 13th century who loses his father and brother to English invaders as a child, and later his wife is also killed by that same King Edward's tyranny. William becomes a figurehead, leading a rebellion to unite the clans and overthrow Longshanks. Wallace is such a believer in the possibility of a Scotland free from Longshanks' control that even at his execution, as he's being disemboweled, he continues to cheer for freedom, inspiring his fellow countrymen. And his hope for a better tomorrow lived on. William Wallace's friend and ally, Robert the Bruce, carried on his hope for a better future as Scotland's king as he faced the British again at Bannockburn, using Wallace's name to drum up their will to fight. Wallace's unyielding vision, forging unity from despair, makes him a very powerful Blue Lantern. His hope is a fire that burns through doubt, and his leadership uplifts others against tyranny, and embodies the Corps' mission to spark faith in the darkest of times. And as the color blue deepens into indigo, hope blossoms into compassion. The Indigo tribe channels the compassion one feels for others, but unlike the other Corps, Indigo rings don't typically seek out those with great compassion in their hearts. Instead, they uniquely target the universe's most heartless souls to flood them with empathy, forcing them into a state of compassion by overwhelming their minds. An Indigo ring grants the power of teleportation and the ability to mimic nearby ring colors, an expression of their ability to empathize with the emotions of other Corps. When picking characters for the Indigo tribe, I want those completely devoid of compassion, ruthless, selfish monsters who delight in cruelty more than they care about their own rage, greed, or ability to cause fear. My first idea was for Hannibal Lecter from The Silence of the Lambs, but unfortunately that is an adaptation of a book. Then my mind went to Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men, but guess what? Yep, it was a book first. This happened for my next 3 or 4 ideas, by the way, but eventually I managed to find some real movie villains who would be perfect for the tribe. First up, Hans Gruber, the suave German thief who poses as a terrorist to steal $640 million from Nakatomi Plaza's vault in Die Hard. His calculated heist is disrupted by off-duty cop John McClane, revealing Gruber's ruthless pragmatism. Now, before I get the comments, yes, I know, Die Hard is actually based on a book as well, but only loosely. McClane and Gruber are both entirely different characters, and the plot is actually fairly different too. So, I'm putting my foot down on this one, got it? Anyway, Gruber is your classic sociopath. He's extremely charismatic and articulate and great at charming people, but it's all a facade we get to see behind when he coldly uses people's lives as bargaining chips. He executes Mr. Takagi without a thought, lies to every single person around him, including his own team, and narcissistically needs everyone to know he was the one who outsmarted them. With an Indigo ring, all of Gruber's murderous ambitions would be completely overwritten with a caring kindness for others, and poor John McClane's feet will finally get a break. For my next pick, I had to go with Terrence Fletcher of Whiplash. A brutal music instructor at an elite conservatory, he's completely obsessed with forging greatness, regardless of what happens to his students. His abusive methods push drummer Andrew Neiman to the brink and past it, but Fletcher never cares. Fletcher is fascinating because he has these moments in the film where he shows glimmers of humanity. When he explains his love of music and desire to uplift a student into greatness, or when he cries to his band after one of his former students passed away in a car crash. But when we later learn that there was no car crash and his student took his own life due to Fletcher's brutal methods, a detail Fletcher ignores and reimagines to manipulate his newer students, that's when we see the true depths of his self-centered nature. I think Fletcher is the closest you can get to a horror movie villain who's just a regular guy. Every time he was on screen, I was completely on edge, never knowing how he would snap and take it out on Neiman. The power of an Indigo ring would temper his selfishness, his anger. He would be a much less effective conductor, but if I learned anything from Whiplash, that is not a bad thing. And for my final and favorite pick of the Indigo tribe, I have to go with Louis Bloom from Nightcrawler. Lou starts out as a petty thief, stealing from anyone he can get away with. And we get a little insight to his sociopathy when we first hear him talk. He speaks entirely in corporate HR terms, like his brain is made entirely of LinkedIn posts. He's barely human, just a monster pretending to be one. But his real evil appears once he learns about night crawling, a job where you listen to police radio and drive around to film crimes and accidents, selling that footage to local news stations. Lou becomes obsessed with filming more and more gruesome scenes, repositioning dead bodies to get a better shot, cutting the brakes on his competition's van, concealing information from the police, and causing a public shootout just so he'll be the first on the scene to record it. He even gets his partner killed after his ego is bruised. And that's not even touching on how he manipulates his local news anchor Nina into an unwanted sexual relationship by threatening to end her career. Louis Bloom is the scum of the earth, and the perfect candidate for an Indigo ring. His antisocial personality ready to be overwritten with compassion and love. And speaking of love, the star sapphires wield the violet light of love, ebbing and flowing in power depending on how many other sapphires are nearby. Crafting crystalline constructs, they can protect or trap their beloveds for eternity. Their love, romantic, familial, or obsessive, drives them with desires for connection, fears of loss, and grudges against those who threaten their bonds. It doesn't matter what kind of love a sapphire feels, only that you feel it very strongly. And in case you're wondering, the cores used to be all female, but did recently change to allow male members, although there haven't been any notable ones yet. So, while I will pick mostly women, there might be a man in here too. Before I begin, I do want to give an honorable mention to my number 4 pick, Barbie, from Barbie. I know the character is technically a toy, and when she was in cartoons, that was before this, but the movie is sort of a meta-continuity, including all that stuff, and Barbie's selfless love for all of her sisters and the Kens is kind of perfect for a violet ring, but my next picks are much better. Up top, her love is so strong it made her throw a priceless diamond into the ocean on a whim. Rose from Titanic. Rose started out as a 17-year-old heiress in the year 1912, engaged to wealthy but controlling Cal Hockley. Aboard the doomed Titanic, she met the poor artist Jack Dawson, whose love frees her from her gilded cage, leading her into a life of independence. Her transformative interactions with Jack open her heart, eventually breaking her societal chains. She learns that love can exist and grow instead of the cold arrangement that her engagement was headed towards, and her choice to survive and live for Jack aligns with the Violet Ring's power to protect love. Her enduring devotion, carrying his memory for decades, makes her a perfect Violet Lantern. The unending drive to never let go would charge her ring for decades. If she doesn't toss it in the ocean. I mean, come on, she could have given that thing to her kids or charity or something, seriously. Anyway, my next pick might seem a little unconventional, but I promise is a perfect fit. John Wick. A retired assassin living quietly in New York after the death of his wife Helen, he was dragged back into the underworld when a cocky mobster kid kills the puppy Helen left him and steals his car. Afterwards, Wick unleashes a relentless campaign to reclaim his peace, honoring Helen's memory through his actions. Helen's love, living on through the puppy, is the conceit for the whole film, and the loss of that love is what sends John into a spiral of blood and bullets. Wick's love for Helen defines his every move. All he wants is to preserve her legacy in his heart, channeling grief into a quest for justice. I think John Wick's longing, aching love would earn him a Star Sapphire ring, which he would use to systematically dismantle everyone and everything that harms the image of Helen left in his mind. And much like how there are animal lanterns, like Chip the Green Lantern squirrel or Dexstar the Red Lantern cat, I think John's dog would join him, also wearing a sapphire ring to carry Helen's love into the stars together. Finally, with another Keanu Reeves movie, we have Trinity from the Matrix trilogy. Trinity is a skilled hacker and fighter in a dystopian world enslaved by machines and trapped in an artificial computer reality. Told a prophecy by the Oracle that she would fall in love with the One, Trinity only reveals Neo is the one once she realizes that she's fallen in love with him, and their love transcends death. Trinity revives Neo with a kiss after he's killed by Agent Smith, and in Reloaded, Neo literally reaches into Trinity's chest to restart her heart with his hands. Trinity is always willing to risk her life if it means she can support Neo. She loves the One, savior of humanity, in a form of admiration, but she also loves Neo, the man. And when Trinity's choice to join Neo to Machine City leads to her death, she's not upset or scared. She's grateful to have loved him. Trinity would make a perfect Star Sapphire. She's already a badass heroine familiar with world-altering power, and the light of a violet ring would grant her the strength to defeat the machines and create a new world where she's free to live out the rest of her days with Neo. But things are getting too happy, too sappy. Let's darken it up a bit. At the end of the emotional spectrum is the void. Where there are no emotions, there is no life. The Black Lantern Corps embodies the pit of death, their rings animating the dead or once dead, mimicking other powers while draining emotional light from the living. Driven by a desire to extinguish all life, these agents of the grave spread decay, their motivations rooted in enforcing mortality's finality. When choosing characteristics for Black Rings, I wanted to look for a mentality rooted in spreading death. Some of my red, yellow, and indigo picks definitely kill a lot, but not because they love death as a concept. That's what we're zeroing in on here. Whether through calculated cruelty or primal instinct, they could embody death's cold grip, ready to wield the black light to consume hope, love, and will, leaving only silence in their wake. My first pick is the twisted serial killer John Doe from Seven. Doe is a mysterious ritual murderer targeting victims to specifically punish the 7 deadly sins: gluttony, pride, wrath, lust, you know them. He executes each of his victims with a cold and ruthless efficiency. There's no joy or selfish pleasure in any of it. He is a void of emotion. He crafts a perfect plan to kill all 6 of his victims in such a way that their deaths will have meaning and convince the world to confront the sins that have consumed them. Now, I did say 6 victims because he is actually the 7th victim, deeming himself guilty of the sin of envy. He manipulates Detective Mills into killing him. Doe is such a believer that the deaths he's causing will save the world that he doesn't even care if he has to die too. With a black ring, Doe would rise again after his own execution, spreading his death ritual of 7 perfect murders all across the world, repeating it over and over again to spread his cleansing ideology worldwide. My next pick is similar, a religious fanatic obsessed with the sanctity of the deaths he helps cause, the Harbinger from The Cabin in the Woods. In this movie, the old gods that once ruled the earth are kept dormant by regular ritual human sacrifices submitted to them all over the world. These sacrifices are so specific and legalistically defined that they're carried out by white-collar government organizations that treat it like just another day at the office. But as these technicians sit and watch teens get murdered from behind their screens, there are still true believers who worship the old gods and believe that the innocents being sacrificed are deserving of death, the entire ritual a just and noble exercise. The Harbinger, the old man at the gas station who warns the teens of danger before they drive out to the cabin, is one such fanatic. He rants and raves about how their sinful souls deserve the death that awaits them, and is pleased to know that the old gods will receive their sacrifice soon. As a Black Lantern, the Harbinger would become an active part of the killing, likely co-opting the zombies and various other undead forces we see in the film, using them to systematically murder to appease the Lords of Darkness. And for my final pick, how could I go with anyone other than Michael Myers from the Halloween films? Completely broken from birth, Myers killed his sister when he was only 6 years old, and lives as a silent, emotionless, empty shell of a man. Described by Dr. Loomis as pure evil incarnate with no will of his own, he's the perfect pick for a core completely devoid of emotion. All Michael Myers does, and I don't say wants because he doesn't want anything, all he does is kill. His entire purpose is to silently spread death. He doesn't kill for revenge, or anger, or even enjoyment. He's not like chaotic or sadistic, he's inevitable, like death itself. As a Black Lantern, he would barely change at all, but his victims would join him in his slow, systematic march towards the next victim, spreading the black terror of death for an eternal nighttime. Well, maybe not eternal. The sun's gotta rise sometime. The only light that burns away the black stench of death is the white light of life. The White Lantern Corps wields the radiant light of life, unifying every color of the emotional spectrum: rage, greed, fear, will, hope, compassion, and love, in a force that heals and creates. Their rings obliterate black rings, and even tap into the godly power of the life equation. A white ring can only be earned by someone who takes the time to fully master the emotions of each color of the spectrum, but a white ring can be granted to those who embrace and champion life and freedom by a current White Lantern. When searching for a film character to wear white ring, we need to find heroes who celebrate life's complexity, driven by a desire to create and nurture, their motivations rooting in connecting and uplifting others, and experiencing all there is to do throughout the vast universe. They understand fundamentally that life doesn't come at you, it comes from you. My first pick for the White Corps is a survivor and escapee of one of the most invasive and terrifying existences ever devised: Truman Burbank of The Truman Show. Seemingly just an insurance salesman in a perfect island town, Truman lives his life unaware that it's all a production set for a television show about his life, broadcast across the planet as the most popular show in the world. Despite all the psychological conditioning Truman underwent since he was a baby, his father killed off to make him afraid of leaving his home, the one girl he developed organic romantic feelings for kidnapped and permanently disappeared, Truman always held on to a burning desire for freedom and exploration, even as the truth of his reality became painfully clear, that everyone in his life was fake, keeping secrets and controlling his life, including his wife and childhood best friend. Truman didn't succumb to the pain and despair of his situation. He clung to his human spirit, the unyielding drive to live and be free. He conquered his fears, crossed the sea surrounding his island even as he nearly died to the tremendous gale force storms, and reached the wall at the edge of everything, stepping through to face the unknown. Truman would be a fantastic White Lantern, his entire life a vibrant affirmation of freedom. My next choice is Evelyn Wang, main character of Everything Everywhere All at Once. Starting out as a burnt-out laundromat owner facing both financial and family struggles, she gets thrust into a multiversal adventure where she experiences what it's like to live as every possible version of herself across countless realities, all while chasing after an alternate version of her daughter Joy, who saw that same endless expanse and came away an existential nihilist, obsessed with bringing about an end to everything, everywhere, all at once. Yeah. At first, Evelyn is overwhelmed by infinity, but she slowly connects to every version of herself, learning to appreciate the mundane life she was pulled away from, her goofy and forgetful husband, and even gaining perspective great enough to touch the heart of Joy, bringing their family back together again. Evelyn embraces chaos to find harmony, the definition of life. Her ability to weave every emotion together and come out the other end a champion of freedom and creation is exactly why she deserves a white ring. Evelyn's journey, turning despair into compassion, reflects the Corps' mission to create life from chaos, her vision a celebration of existence's infinite possibilities. And finally, I've been waiting to talk about him since the Red Lantern section. My favorite choice for the White Ring of Life is Luke Skywalker, son of the Chosen One and hero of the galaxy. Luke's journey from whiny moisture farmer to suave Jedi Master is not only one of my favorite character developments in the world of movies, but it's a great example of the journey a White Lantern goes on to master the emotional spectrum. Luke confronts his fear, his greed, his rage. He embraces his hope, compassion, and love, all with a burning will, tempered and focused through the quiet contemplation of the Force. Unlike the Jedi of old, who lived their lives repressing their emotions, Luke isn't afraid to feel love and hope. He loves his friends, his sister, and yes, even his father, Darth Vader. Luke doesn't accept that anyone is ever truly lost to the dark side. He lives in his emotions and confronts Vader in Palpatine's throne room, but ultimately shows his mastery of self. He doesn't kill Vader or Palpatine. He chooses life. He is a Jedi Knight like his father before him, and a perfect White Lantern. Luke would absolutely use the white light to foster galactic harmony, spreading light to inspire freedom wherever it reaches. Stay frosty.